Hello, I'm Erik Prince, and welcome to Off Leash. With me today is a longtime friend and mentor, one of my early childhood heroes, a guy named Dr. Jack Wheeler, who literally from my childhood days is the closest thing to the real-life Indiana Jones. He has lived a life of adventure and still does amazing, adventurous things all over the world. I think he's been to every country on earth. He understands people and cultures and historical perspective, had a lot to do with my early thinking. He is a great American. I have maximum respect for his career and for especially what he did in helping shape policy at a critical time. And we're going to get into that today. And so, Jack, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here with you, Erik.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
we're honored to have you. And I just start by taking us through a bit of your life story. Where were you born? Where'd you go to school? And take us through it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, it's kind of an elevator speech then, really quick. I was born in Southern California and grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles, a place called Glendale. And it was just an idyllic life back there a long time ago in the 50s. And what to say? I mean, I just had an ordinary kid's life. I ended up being the Eagle Scout at an early age. And because that was all that I knew what to do was go after scouting. And I ended up being invited to the White House to meet President Eisenhower because he told me I was the youngest Eagle Scout in Boy Scout history. So it was an extraordinary experience. And so that left a big impression on me. And then when I was 14, I read a book. And it was a book by somebody I'd never heard of, but my friend of my father's had given it to me for a Christmas present. And I never paid attention to it until finally one day, a rainy afternoon, there's nothing to do. There's no television or when you were a kid back then, you just rode your bike out to friends and rode your bike or hiked out in the mountains, etc. And but it was a book by a man named Richard Halliburton. He was a very famous adventurer in the 20s and 30s. So this book was over 20 years old. But all of a sudden, when he talked about the world and how it was, and it just made me, the impact has never left me to this day of what a kid from Glendale didn't know anything about the world. And it made me realize the world was this magic place that you would never get to the end of it. You'd never see and experience all there was in this incredible world.
What was it? What was the name of the book?
The name of the book is The Complete Book of Marvels by Richard Halliburton, published in 1938, 1939, about then. And Halliburton died many, many, many years ago. But at any rate, it left such an impression on me. I took the book open to the Matterhorn, and I laid it on my father's lap because he was reading a book, rainy Saturday afternoon. And I heard myself say, like I didn't, no decision. I was just like I was almost sleepwalking. And I heard myself say, I pointed to the picture of the Matterhorn. I said, Dad, I want to climb that mountain. Now, here's a 14-year-old kid, no mountaineering experience, announces completely out of the blue that he wants to climb the most famous mountain in the world. And the parents didn't know would know what to have said or done, but my father saw something that touched me. He saw something that had touched me, and he said, well, let's talk about it. And so we talked, and I told him, well, I've been on hikes in mountains, like Boy Scout hikes, and I'm not afraid of heights, or whatever I started making up. And he said, well, actually, my father was a television producer on a local television station in Los Angeles. And he said, maybe you've met our lighting director when you've been to the studio with me. His name is Hannes Schmidt. I said, yeah, I think so. He's from Switzerland. And actually, he has won a bronze medal in the 1948 Olympics. And maybe he knows people. So I'll ask him. Wow. And so that changed my life. But what really changed my life, and this is an important thing for all parents to know, it's what my father didn't do that made the big difference in my life. He didn't laugh. He didn't laugh. Like, a kid announcing was a climb the most famous mountain in the world out of nowhere.
But you had a certain amount of credibility. You were the youngest Eagle Scout in history at what, age 12, 13?
12.
Amazing. Holy cow.
Yeah. So, but that's not real credibility. My father didn't laugh. And so as it turned out, Hannes knew one of the best mountain guides called Bert Feuers in Zermatt, which is a famous skiing place. And so he knew everybody. And Hannes arranged it. And I threw we were going to Europe because my father was filming for the station in Europe that summer. It was 1958. And we were going to Russia. That was the big deal. So the studio would go, yeah, sure, film, we'll do that. That's an American family in Moscow, in Russia, in 1958, the middle of the Cold War.
Wow.
That's a big deal, you know. And so how the Russia thing ended up was another matter. But at any rate, I ended up with Alphonse, the guide, and we're making our way up to the hut on the slopes of the Matterhorn to climb it very, very early the next morning. And I asked Alphonse, I said, well, Alphonse, do you think I have a chance? And he said, I don't know. You know, nobody's ever climbed the mountain this young. I mean, I only told Hannes that I would guide you up the mountain as far as I think it's safe. And that was our deal. So I have no idea.
And for people that are not familiar with the Matterhorn, it's vertical, technical climbing, roped up, crampons, the full works.
4,000 feet straight up and 4,000 feet straight down. You got to do it in a matter of hours because the weather changes so fast. But what Alphonse told me as we're walking up, because he said, I don't know if you're going to make it. We'll have to see. I said, but I can tell you one thing. Your father thinks you can. And so we get up 3:30 in the morning out of the hut and start walking in the night. And we had no headlamps in those days. He carries a lantern. so all I did was follow his feet. You know, that's all I did. The whole world was his feet. You know, where his feet went, that's where my hands and my feet go, etc. And we get up higher and higher and higher and higher, and put on the crampons, as you say, and there's fixed ropes up in the Schultes ice field, and we get to a place called the Hangover, infamous place in Matterhorn, and I'm starting to run out of gas. And he said, "Well, how do you feel? I notice your legs are, you know, a little wobbly there." And I said, "Oh no, no, we've made it almost this way. I've made it so far." And he said, "Well, do you think you can make it another 200 feet?" I said, yes. And he said, okay, let's go. And we made it to the top of the Matterhorn. And the thing with the Matterhorn is it's a knife blade. It's no peak. It's a ridge, about 100 feet long, goes up like this, no ridge. So we're standing on the ridge, and I noticed a plane. And I said, Ralph, there's a plane flying around down there. I said, no. He said, mm-hmm. And so my father had talked to a pilot the day before and had talked to Alphonse. He says, I'm going to get a pilot and fly me up on the mountain, go up to the top of the mountain. We can only make one pass. Okay. So what time, if the boy makes it, about what time? It's about 11 o'clock in the morning. And my father, makes his plane, comes up to the mountain, and he doesn't know if I'm going to be there or not, and I was there.
Wow.
And so I'm waving
what a beautiful
like
moment.
this, and I'm crying, of course, and he's waving, and got a camera going, etc. And it's not that I'll never forget it. It's that my father passed away many years ago, and he couldn't speak. He was in a hospital bed, and he was dying, and we could shake hands. He couldn't speak, but he could grip, and I could feel his strength. And the memory of that moment is powerful. The memory that we shared when he died. So now I meet a wonderful woman, and we get married, Rebel, and we have a boy, Brandon, our first child, our first boy. My son, Brandon, is 14, and he says, "Dad, you climbed the Matterhorn when you were 14. I'm 14 now. How about us climbing the Matterhorn together?" And we did. And
that's beautiful.
To stand on the top of the Matterhorn again with your son, it was easy for him because Brandon, he's like, he's in shape.
He's a fit, capable guy.
Captain of the Marines, and so. But me, it was a little bit harder back then. I was 54, but I was able to make it. But at any rate, reading Halliburton's book started me, and people collect stamps, they collect coins, they collect things. And I decided when I was 14 years old, I was going to have a collection of extraordinary experiences. That would be memorable. You can't ever take away. You can never take the memories. You can never take what you've done. And so pretty much devoted my life, and of course studying philosophy as well, ever since.
So the Matterhorn is how tall?
14,787 feet.
Wow. Okay. So a quick summary of some of the other crazy adventures you did as a young man. I think there was a parachute jump somewhere.
I was later. I got adopted into a clan of Jivoroa headhunters. The Jivoros, they call themselves Shwara. They're in the Amazon, Oriente Amazon of Ecuador. They're the ones who shrink heads. There's a lot of tribes that hunt the heads and keep the skull as a trophy. But the Jivoros, they shrink the head skin. They skin the head and then sew it up and shrink it. And while it's shrinking, they boil it in the herbs and put in hot sand, etc., and shrink it down. And when it becomes plastic, so the spirit can recognize its face and go inside. And when that happens in the ceremony, they trap the spirit in the head. And so he's trapped in a smaller head now, and so he can't create bad magic and mischief.
I have to ask, how did you find that tribe, and how did you prearrange that you would not be one of the shrinkies?
Well, people were always coming by the house. And so, I don't know, I'm 15 or 16 or whatever it was. And so so this fellow, a friend of my dad's, who were all talking around, and they say, "So, young Jack, what's your next adventure? Going to live with headhunters?" And everybody laughed, like it was a joke, I, of course, said, "What headhunters?" And he said, "Oh, well, there's a story about this doctor, this medical doctor who has gone down to the Ecuador's in the Saturday Evening Post. I read it, and he lives with this tribe. The Jivoros, they hunt the heads. The doctor, his name is Dr. Wilburn Ferguson, and if he could shrink the Jivaros could shrink head skin, perhaps they could shrink cancerous skin. And that was his research. And I got in touch with him. I figured out how to get in touch with him. We exchanged letters. I met him. And he invited me. I told him I was a beginning student in anthropology at UCLA and that the Jivaros were very interesting to me, and he invited me to come. And then I ended up getting down there, and he had to go back to the United States, so I ended up staying with the Jivaros with the chief, whose name was Tongamashi, and Tongamashi ended up adopting me into his family. And it was an extraordinary experience. I was 16 years old.
Wow. So you spent the summer with headhunters. What else? Take us through the top 10 craziest things that Jack Wheeler has done in your life.
There's so many things, but it's been like this for, I ended up hitting a man-eating tiger in Vietnam. That was when I was 17.
Here's Jack in Dalat, South Vietnam, 1961, when he was 17 years old. A friend of his father's was a professional hunter and would go to far-reaching places to hunt dangerous game. In this case, it was a practical application because Jack was actually asked to hunt a tiger that had killed over 20 villagers in the Montagnard high country of Vietnam. Somehow he talked his parents into letting him do this. He had saved up money from giving tennis and judo lessons. So there he was in the pitch dark with a flashlight wired to the barrel of a 300 Weatherby, waiting for the tiger to come in for the rotting water buffalo carcass they'd set out as bait. Suffice to say, as the picture shows, Jack was successful.
It's a long list, Erik. I've got 3 first contacts where I and the people with me that I took with me, because now I'm leading expeditions, were with the first one was by myself and a helicopter pilot. We landed in this village of Aucas. This is again in the Amazon of Ecuador. They're the ones who kill all the missionaries, but they were very nice to us. We didn't have any problem, and we got along great. And that was the first contact. And then there's 2 others. A tribe called the Walialifo in Papua New Guinea that never been contacted before, and then a band of Bushmen in the Kalahari that this particular band, they had not been contacted before, and that was a very, very special experience.
Right. So but you were just talking about in the Amazon of South America, Papua New Guinea island in the Southeast Asia, and then the Kalahari in the remote Bushman part of Africa. And all this was before college.
Oh, no. That's a long over. We're a couple of decades here. We're going.
Okay. All right.
Etc. But
and I recall hearing something about a parachute jump onto the North Pole.
That was in 1981. The world record was the northernmost parachute jump was set by a Canadian guy in 1969. He had landed 31 nautical miles off the North Pole. And so is it 89, 39, something like that. But at any rate, the North Pole is at 90 north. You've got,
yep.
You know how it works, right? The equator is 0. And so right angles to the equator is straight up, and that's the North Pole, 90 north latitude. And so by now I have figured out a way, because I have an expedition business, I figured out a way to get people to the North Pole. And by now I'm also into skydiving. It's my sport. And so I brought my rig, and we were able to land right on the ice at 90 north, which is not easy, and needed a particular configuration of ice. And so the people got out, took the doors off, which is de Havilland Twin Otter, and the fuel drums out, and pilot, co-pilot, and I flew up and I got him up to 8,000 feet because I wanted at least a mile of free fall. And
that's amazing.
Got him the spot and out the door. And it was a real
So I have to
rush.
ask, were you jumping a Paracommander rig or staff?
No,
it was a free fall rig, right?
It was square. Rammer.
Yep.
Okay. And Paracommander. That's when you SEALs learned how to dive land like a sack of potatoes, etc. And I learned how to do that, but as soon as I could get out of them, I got out of them fast.
I am later to the game in skydiving, but still do it often and enjoy it very much.
Oh, great.
So
you fly Ram Airs now, so Paracommanders
sure.
Long time ago. At any rate, it was a fabulous experience and right on top of the world. And I could go on and on and on, but at any rate, landed and I stand up right next to everybody on the ice and North Pole, Guinness Book of World Records.
Fantastic.
And Guinness says it's a record that cannot be bettered after setting because you don't get more north than the North Pole. And so that'll stick.
That's very cool. So we'll close off this segment by saying you have lived a life of adventure from being the earliest Boy Scout or the youngest Boy Scout ever, climbing the
Eagle
Matterhorn
Scout, not youngest Boy Scout.
Yeah, Eagle Scout. Sorry, my bad. To living with headhunters, first contacts, most northerly parachute jump. In our next segment, we're going to talk about how you met Ronald Reagan before he was even governor, and that part of your life.
Great.
Next on Off Leash.